The cooperage history at Yalumba is it's a very long one. It's fairly well been here ever since Yalumba began, mainly in a repair and maintenance format. It wasn't really until the late 80s, early 90s that we began making barrel production. Probably by the mid to late 90s, we were doing up around 700-800 barrels a year, so quite a rapid growth. The first step in the barrel making process, I guess, is what we call rising up the barrel. We'll have a sort of a predetermined group of staves, anywhere between sort of 21, 22 for an octave to up to around about 30 to 32 for a hogshead. They're just roughly selected by eye. Where we really start is we start with a rise hoop, so the top hoop of the barrel, sort of 3 clips, and we start it as a bit of a tripod really, and from there we'll just grab the first group of staves, lead it into the barrel against the first stave, keeping pressure against the previous stave until we get around to the final gap in the barrel, if you will, and we'll actually select that by eye from the pack just to fit it nice and snugly. So once we've got the final stave fitted to the barrel, then we'll actually put 2 of the working hoops on. From there, we'll actually tighten them up. We'll go around, we'll flush the barrel off just to minimise any waste that sort of might come out in the sanding process later on. We've got 2 methods that we use to bend the barrels here. The first one, and probably the longest running one, is the traditional shroud. So really it's just an iron shroud or steel shroud. Barrel goes in there over the top of a fire bucket or a fire brazier. Every sort of 5 to 10 minutes we'll give it a squirt down with a bit of water, which starts generating steam, starts making the timber pliable and probably less stressed, so we can bend it up into shape. The second method, and probably the newer method that we have here, is water bending. So it's actually a tub of hot water running at around about 90-95 degrees Celsius. The barrel gets submerged in there for around 20 to 30 minutes generally. After that, it's pliable enough to bend. It comes out up onto the bending platform, cable over the top, and it's pulled in very quickly. They're both bent up the same way, so what actually happens is they'll be removed from either the shroud or the hot water tub, flipped so the splayed end's facing up, and then we pull a steel cable over the top, which pulls the end of the barrel in probably within sort of around about 20 seconds. Fairly quick, because if it's too slow, the timber actually dries out and cools off quite quickly, which can cause cracks and breaks. So yeah, the reason why we bend the barrel up so quickly is that water that we put in the barrel to make it sort of soft and more pliable to bend. It dries and it cools down very quickly. So we want to try and, I guess, minimise the stress in the timber as much as possible, and therefore the bending process probably takes around about 20 to 30 seconds all up. We get the top hoop on nice and quickly, and when we remove the cable from the top, we also put on a belly hoop fairly quickly as well. So it's under a great amount of stress, so we'll put the working hoops on sort of as soon as possible, and we try and get it onto a fire quick smart. By putting it onto the fire as soon as possible, it starts drying it out and actually setting that timber in its shape, and that's what sort of alleviates your stress out of your barrel. The reason why we run the 2 different bending methods is there is a little bit of a difference in the outcome to the wines and the wines that they actually pair up with. The traditional way, just using the shroud, it will give you a more smoky, woody barrel at the end of the process, where the water bend method actually further leaches out some of those undesirable tannins and flavours, if you will, probably lending itself to a softer barrel at the end of the process. The toasting of the barrel is probably the most important part of the barrel making process. So if you get that wrong, I mean, you can A, either have a structurally weak barrel, or B, obviously a barrel with a flavour profile that you really don't want. What we actually do is we run 2 to 3 fires, generally for around about 30 to 40 minutes of fire overall. The first fire predominantly is a drying fire, so we're setting that barrel in its shape from when we bent it up. The second and third fire, that's where we're really putting in those flavours. What we really look for here is nothing more than a medium toast. That way it's a bit more balanced and you're not overpowering your fruit with a very woody sort of smoky barrel. They kind of mellow out and balance a bit better together. The whole time that the barrel's in the toasting line, we're also putting oak into the braziers. You don't want to put, say, pine or anything like that in there. That would give sort of an adverse effect or a different effect to the barrel and the end result in the wine. We're very sustainable as far as that goes. So all our old barrels that come out the system from previous vintages, they all get shaved down, cut up into offcuts, and that's what we use for the new barrel make. The other thing that we're doing is also, as we're going along, we're tightening the barrel up the whole time, driving those hoops down nice and flush. And what that actually does is it starts sort of kneading the timber into each other, which forms a little bit of a zigzag in the two flat surfaces. And that's what creates your seal and your hold in the barrel, as there's no glue or anything like that that's sort of in the process. Once the barrel's toasted and it's boxed out, it's toasted to the profile that we're looking for, we put a bunghole in there, and that's obviously where the wine passes through. So we'll just drill that out centrally, and after that we'll seal it off with a hot burner, and that's essentially just to stop any of that wine travelling back through the end grain of the timber, which can lead to spoilage down the track. Because we're not a real fancy cooperage, and we don't have a lot of machines that are measuring down to the millimetre, all our barrels do vary just slightly in size. For that reason, we actually do individually size each hoop and hand rivet the finished hoop one by one. We make here roughly around about 300 to 350 barrels yearly, not all year round. We try and start just before vintage kicks off and ideally finish right at the tail end of it, and that's just to really try and assure that when that wine's ready to go, our barrels are as fresh as possible for that wine to go into. We're one of a handful of wineries in the world. Literally, I think there's only 5 or 6 that have a producing cooperage that make new barrels, and that gives us the real ability to play around with the barrels from year to year and actually trial, a few things here and there, and actually really develop a barrel that suits the wines that we're making. It is gratifying, and it is nice to kind of put your stamp in that finished product, and gives you something to walk home with a smile on your face.